Have you ever been born into royalty, yet treated like dirt beneath their boots? What happens when the blood that runs through your veins is the very reason they wish you'd never been born? What if the weakest among them, the one they mocked, caged, and humiliated, was destined to become the most powerful creature their world had ever seen? And what if the Alpha King himself, the ruthless conqueror feared across the lands, was bound by fate to her, the girl they called the cursed Omega? This is her story. The story of the girl beneath the ashes. The girl the world rejected before it ever realized who she truly was. The moon hung low above the silver peaks of Moon Vale, its light dimmed as though mourning something long lost. The grand palace gleamed in marble and gold, laughter echoing through its endless halls. But in the farthest corner, down a narrow servant passage lit by flickering candles, a girl scrubbed the floor until her hands bled. Her name was Lyra Vale, princess by birth, servant by fate, the daughter of King Edrian Vale, ruler of Moonvale Pack, and the only child ever cursed to be born an Omega. She was small, fragile-looking, her once golden hair dulled by soot and exhaustion. Her wolf was silent, buried deep within her, too afraid to awaken. Every scar on her skin was a reminder that she did not belong in her own family. The whispers followed her everywhere. The cursed one. The reason the queen is dead. The king should have left her to the wild. Because on the night Lyra was born, the queen, her mother, had died screaming, blood staining the royal moonstone floors. The midwives swore they saw the moon itself darken. The king never forgave her for that. Lyra had grown up serving her father's new wife, Lady Maris, and her daughters, Celine and Fiora, both radiant, both cruel. They were everything she wasn't, powerful she-wolves, adored and proud. And Lyra, she was the palace's shame. That morning, she stood barefoot in the cold kitchen, kneeling beside a cauldron as steam stung her face. The servants ignored her. Most feared that even speaking to the cursed Omega might invite misfortune. She stirred silently, lost in her thoughts, until an elderly maid whispered nearby. "The Alpha King of Shadowcrest arrives tonight," the woman said. "They say he's a monster. He burned a whole pack for defying him." Lyra's heart skipped. The Alpha King. She'd heard of him. Kael Draven, the ruthless conqueror, a man who took no prisoners, a king of kings. And yet, something in her chest tightened when she heard his name. A spark of recognition her mind couldn't explain. "Girl!" a sharp voice snapped. Celine, her eldest stepsister, swept in, her gown shimmering with crystals. "The feast hall must shine brighter than the stars, do you understand, if you embarrass father again?" Lyra kept her head bowed. "Yes, my lady." "Speak louder," Celine demanded, smirking as the other servants paused to watch. "You're not mute, are you, Omega?" Lyra swallowed the rising heat in her throat. "Yes, my lady," she repeated, louder this time. "Good." Celine smiled, the kind that cut deeper than claws. "Remember, you may share our blood, but you'll never share our name." She swept out of the kitchen, her perfume of roses and pride lingering behind. Lyra exhaled shakily, her trembling hands gripping the edge of the table. Every day was the same. Every humiliation a reminder of her place. And yet, she stayed. Because once, long ago, her mother's fading voice had whispered, "Never forget who you are, my little moonlight. One day, the world will bow." But it was hard to believe such words when you lived like a shadow. Hours later, the palace blazed with gold light. Nobles arrived in chariots drawn by silver-furred wolves. Music swelled through the halls. The scent of roasted venison and moonflower wine filled the air. And among the glittering crowd, Lyra walked unnoticed, carrying trays of goblets. If this story already has your heart racing, don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss the next interesting, addictive tale of betrayal, passion, and fate. Trust me, you'll want to be here for every twist that's coming. She had scrubbed floors, polished armor, and polished every tile until her fingers were raw. Her pale blue dress was simple, servant's attire, but her posture carried something the others didn't see: quiet endurance. As she approached the long royal table, she caught her reflection in the wine jug. A pale girl with haunted eyes. Maybe this is all I'll ever be, she thought. A ghost in their story. "Watch where you're going," Fiora hissed, snatching the jug from her. "You'll spill it all over my gown, you clumsy thing." Lyra stepped back quickly. "I'm sorry." But Fiora smiled cruelly and tilted the jug, wine splashing across Lyra's chest, staining her dress in crimson. The crowd went silent. Then came the laughter. "Look," someone jeered. "The Omega Princess finally found a color that suits her. Blood." The nobles laughed harder, glasses clinking. Even the king smirked slightly before averting his gaze. To him, she didn't exist. Lyra stood frozen, humiliation burning her skin, her vision blurred. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but she stayed still, trembling, forcing back tears. Until a hush fell. The grand doors of the hall creaked open, and the air itself seemed to still. He entered like a shadow come to life. Alpha Kael Draven, the Alpha King of Shadowcrest. He was taller than any man Lyra had ever seen, his black cloak trailing behind like smoke, his eyes, silver and cold, scanning the room with the ease of a predator. Every noble bowed instantly. Even King Edrian stood to greet him, false smile plastered across his face. But Kael didn't look at the king. He didn't look at the courtiers or the glittering chandeliers. His gaze stopped. On her. Lyra froze, still dripping wine, still kneeling to gather the broken goblet she'd dropped. His eyes, those silver eyes, locked on hers. For a heartbeat, everything went silent. The laughter, the whispers, the clinking glass, it all faded. Something ancient stirred in her chest. A whisper. A heartbeat not her own. Her wolf, silent since birth, growled softly inside her for the first time. Kael's nostrils flared. His expression flickered just for an instant. Shock, recognition, confusion. The hall held its breath. "Your Majesty," King Edrian began, breaking the tension. "Welcome to Moon Vale. We are honored by your—" "Who is she?" Kael interrupted, his voice deep, commanding, dangerous. Every head turned toward Lyra. "She?" Edrian blinked. "Just a servant, my king. Pay her no mind." But Kael's gaze didn't move. "She's no servant." He stepped forward slowly, boots echoing against marble. "Tell me, girl, what's your name?" Lyra's throat tightened. No one ever asked her that. Not like that. Not with that power behind it. She lowered her eyes, trembling. "Lyra, your Majesty." Kael's gaze softened slightly, though his tone remained unreadable. "Lyra." He said her name as if testing it, tasting it, as though the very sound carried something forbidden. Celine rushed forward, smiling too sweetly. "Forgive her, your Majesty. She's not all there. Our father lets her work here out of pity." Kael's eyes snapped to her. The room felt colder. "Pity," he repeated softly. "How noble." Celine faltered, stepping back. Kael turned again to Lyra, but she was already backing away, clutching the empty tray to her chest. Her heart thundered in her ears. She could feel his gaze burning into her as she disappeared through the servant door. Later that night, as the feast continued, Lyra stood outside the kitchen in the cold courtyard, staring up at the moon. The sky was bruised purple, stars faint behind the clouds. Her dress still smelled of wine. Her pride still stung. But what unsettled her most was the Alpha King's stare, how it felt like he had seen straight into her soul. Why had her wolf reacted to him? Why him, of all people? The wind whispered through the ivy walls, carrying faint sounds of laughter from the hall. She pressed her hand against her chest, feeling the faint pulse of heat beneath her skin. It was strange, like a spark waiting to ignite. No one sees me, she thought. Not really. So why did he? Behind her, footsteps echoed. She turned sharply, but no one was there. Only the faint scent of night and rain. Inside the great hall, Kael sat silently, ignoring the jesters, the dancers, the wine. His beta leaned close. "My king, are you well?" Kael's eyes narrowed toward the far door where she had vanished. That girl, the Omega. What is she doing here? The beta shrugged. Moonvale's forgotten daughter, I believe. The king's disgrace. Kael's jaw tightened. He didn't know why, but the word Omega felt wrong when applied to her. There had been something buried, ancient, powerful, woven into her scent, something that shouldn't exist anymore. He rose abruptly. "Prepare the horses. We leave at dawn." But dawn came differently that day. The moon lingered too long in the sky as if unwilling to leave. And Lyra. She woke from a dream she couldn't remember, her heart racing, her wolf whispering in a voice she hadn't heard in years. "He's coming." She sat up, trembling, hand pressed to her chest as the strange warmth grew stronger, pulling her toward something she didn't understand. At that same moment in the palace courtyard, the king met Kael before his departure. "A pleasure to have you, Your Majesty. I trust the feast pleased you." Kael's expression was unreadable. "The feast, yes." He glanced once toward the upper tower window, where Lyra stood watching unknowingly. "But I have yet to decide about the company." Without another word, he mounted his black stallion, cloak billowing behind him like the shadow of a storm. The guards bowed as he rode away. And far above, Lyra felt the whisper again, this time louder, clearer. Her wolf, once silent, spoke. "Mate." The tray fell from her hands, clattering against the floor. Her breath caught, heart hammering, the impossible truth settling into her bones. The Alpha King of Shadowcrest, the monster they all feared, was her fated mate. For the first time, the Omega Princess lifted her gaze, and her wolf whispered one word. Mate. The palace had never felt so alive, nor so terrified. At dawn, the servants moved like shadows, polishing every inch of marble until it gleamed like liquid moonlight. The scent of fear hung heavier than the perfume of roses. Even the air seemed to tremble, whispering the same name over and over. Kael Draven, the Alpha King of Shadowcrest, the conqueror of 7 packs, the destroyer of 2, the man who bowed to no one, not even the moon itself. Rumor said he could make an entire court kneel with a single look, that he commanded a wolf born of storms and blood, a creature that tore through armies when his wrath was unleashed. Others whispered that he was cursed, that no mate could survive him. And today, that legend would walk the halls of Moonvale. King Edrian ordered the banners changed, the moonstones reburnished, and the scent of fear concealed beneath rare incense from the Eastern Isles. His daughters, Selene and Fiora, fluttered about like jeweled birds, arguing over who would wear the crown of silver thorns that morning. And in the servants' quarters, Lyra Vale scrubbed the very floors her father would walk upon to welcome his guest. Her hands were raw, her knees bruised, but her thoughts refused to stay still. Every time she blinked, she saw silver eyes in the dark. The Alpha King's gaze had followed her even in dreams, cold as steel and yet burning with something unspoken. Her wolf stirred again, nervous, restless, whispering in fragments she couldn't understand. "He's close. He's not safe. He's yours." "Lyra," a harsh voice tore through her haze. Selene stood at the doorway, perfect in white silk, irritation curling her lips. "Stop daydreaming and prepare the guest hall. Father says everything must be flawless." Lyra nodded silently. The words guest hall felt wrong. It was more like a throne room, built for gods, not men. But the Alpha King was no ordinary man. By noon, the palace shimmered beneath the light of a restless sun. The great doors stood open, lined with gold, as guards from Shadowcrest filed in, tall, silent, draped in black. Even their presence seemed to dim the world. Then the air shifted. Kael Draven entered. The murmurs died instantly. The room bowed as one, everyone except Lyra, who stood frozen in the corner, tray in hand, her breath stolen by the sight of him. He was dressed in black leather and dark wolf fur, his cloak whispering across the marble. His silver eyes cut through the hall like a blade. Power rolled off him in waves, making the chandeliers sway and the wolves in the courtyard howl low, as if sensing the arrival of a predator greater than themselves. And then, those eyes found her again. For one heartbeat, time fractured. Lyra forgot to breathe. Kael's pupils flared, a flicker of something ancient burning there. His wolf, Rydar, growled low within his mind, the sound primal, warning. She's not what she seems. A ripple of unease ran through him. He'd stood before queens and killers alike, but no one had ever made his wolf react like this. Her scent, faint, wild, tinged with moonfire, stirred something buried deep in his blood. King Edrian's voice broke the silence, far too cheerful. Your Majesty, what an honor to receive you at last. Kael inclined his head, slow and deliberate. King Edrian. His tone carried no warmth, only the chill of control. The king gestured grandly toward his daughters. These are my heirs, Selene and Fiora, the pride of Moon Vale. The girls curtsied, smiles sweet as venom. Your Majesty, they cooed, eyes gleaming with ambition. But Kael barely looked at them. His gaze slid past jewels and gowns, back to the girl by the pillar, the one pretending not to shake. Lyra's fingers tightened around the tray. Her heart pounded so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. King Edrian noticed Kael's distraction. A servant, he said quickly, almost laughing. Ignore her, my king. She doesn't know her place. Kael's eyes darkened. Doesn't she? The hall went still again. He stepped closer. The scent of pine and storm surrounded him. You, he said softly, voice low enough that only she could hear. You didn't bow. Lyra's lips parted, words trembling on her tongue. I forgot, Your Majesty. He studied her for a long moment, eyes tracing the curve of her jaw, the flicker of defiance in her trembling frame. No, he murmured, almost to himself. You remembered something. Whispers rippled through the room. Fiora scoffed. Forgive her, my king. Our sister is slow. Kael's gaze snapped to her, sharp as lightning. Sister? The king stiffened. She was, once. A mistake best forgotten. Kael's stare lingered on him, then returned to Lyra. There are no mistakes, he said coldly. Only secrets. Adrian's smile faltered. Perhaps a change of topic, Your Majesty. The feast awaits. Music. Wine. But Kael was no longer listening. His wolf pressed against his control, restless. Something about the girl set his blood thrumming. He forced himself to turn away, though every step felt like restraint carved into flesh. As he moved past her, the air seemed to thicken. Lyra dared to look up, and their eyes met again. Her pulse stuttered. The tray in her hand trembled. For a second she saw something behind those eyes. Loneliness, perhaps. Or danger wrapped in destiny. When he finally walked away, her knees gave out, and she caught herself against the wall, breath ragged. All through the feast, she could feel him. Even without looking, she knew where he sat, when he moved, when his gaze found her. He never smiled, never laughed. He watched. And when the others tried to entertain him, when Selene danced, or Fiora leaned too close, Kael's expression never changed. He was a storm contained by a crown, waiting for the right moment to break, until Adrian spoke again, forcing a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. I hear, Your Majesty, that no she-wolf has ever tamed you. Is that true? Kael's silver eyes glinted. Tamed? His voice was silk-edged with steel. The moon does not tame the storm. It survives it. A nervous chuckle went around the table. Selene, undeterred, leaned forward. Perhaps you've simply never met one worthy enough to try. Kael's gaze shifted slightly, to where Lyra stood in the shadows, silent, head bowed. Perhaps, he said, voice dropping to something dangerous, or perhaps the worthy one has yet to awaken. Lyra's heart stopped. She didn't know why, but those words struck something deep, something trembling and alive. The hall erupted again with chatter, but Kael rose suddenly, ignoring the feast, and walked out into the night. Hours passed. The palace quieted. Lyra, unable to sleep, slipped into the moonlit garden beyond the kitchens. The night air was cool, filled with the soft song of crickets and the faint hum of magic that always lingered around Moonvale. She knelt beside the fountain, dipping her hands into the silver water, trying to calm the chaos inside her. Her reflection shimmered back, tired, fragile, afraid. "What's happening to me?" she whispered. Her wolf answered faintly, "He's near." "Why him?" she breathed. "Why now?" A voice came from the shadows, deep, commanding, familiar. "Because fate doesn't ask permission." She spun around. Kael stood beneath the archway, moonlight carving his features into something both divine and dangerous. "My king," she started, but he raised a hand. "Don't call me that." He stepped closer. "You've been avoiding me. I'm a servant. It's not my place." "Lies," he said softly, his voice a caress that sent shivers down her spine. "Your wolf doesn't bow to anyone. I can smell it on you, the power, hidden, suppressed." "Why?" Lyra took a step back, heart racing. "I don't know what you're talking about." He closed the distance in 2 strides. "You do." His fingers brushed her chin, tilting her face toward his. "Your scent called to mind the moment I entered that hall." She trembled, the world spinning. "You're mistaken." "Am I?" His gaze dropped to her lips. "Tell me, little wolf, does your heart always beat this fast when you lie?" Her breath hitched. "Please, someone will see us." "Let them," he said, voice deepening. "Let them see the truth they're too blind to recognize." The tension crackled like lightning between them. The moonlight flickered across his eyes, now glowing faintly silver, radar pressing to the surface. "Your wolf hides something," he whispered, his breath ghosting over her skin. "And I'll find out what." Before she could speak, his hand brushed hers. A surge of energy exploded between them, white, blinding, alive. The fountain's waters rippled violently, and above them, the moon itself seemed to tremble. Lyra gasped. Her wolf roared awake, fully, fiercely, for the first time in her life. Kael staggered slightly, eyes wide. "What are you?" She could barely breathe. I don't know." But somewhere deep within, her wolf whispered one word again, soft, certain, unyielding. "Mate." Kael heard it too. His wolf growled in reply, low and possessive, a sound that vibrated through the night. He stepped closer until only inches separated them. "If that's true," he said, voice rough with something primal, "then the moon just chose a war neither of us can escape." The night wind howled through the garden, carrying their scent. 2 wolves bound by a fate older than kingdoms. And when his fingers finally left hers, the world around them felt forever changed. Above them, the moon pulsed brighter, as if bearing witness to the forbidden bond being born beneath its gaze. And for the first time in her cursed, quiet life, Lyra Vale realized her story was only just beginning. Night pressed heavy over Moonvale. The torches had long since died, leaving the palace drowned in shadow and whispers. Somewhere deep within the servant's wing, a scream caught in a throat before it could escape. Lyra jolted upright, drenched in cold sweat. Her heart hammered against her ribs like it wanted out. The dream had been fire, endless fire, and a golden wolf shackled in chains of light. Its eyes had been her own. She pressed trembling hands against her chest. The skin burned there, as if the dream had followed her into waking. When she slipped from her bed, the air itself felt strange, charged, humming, alive. A single moonbeam slipped through the cracked shutters, painting a silver path across the floor. She followed it to the small mirror by her cot, lifted her nightgown, and froze. There, glowing faintly beneath her shoulder blade, was a mark she had never seen before, a crescent intertwined with ancient runes that pulsed like living light. The pain flared again, forcing a gasp. The mark shimmered, then dimmed, leaving her breathless. A knock rattled her door. "Lyra?" The voice belonged to Mira, the royal healer, one of the few who ever showed her kindness. "Child, open up." Lyra hesitated, then unlatched the door. Mira entered, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, carrying a small lantern that painted both their faces in amber glow. Her gaze fell immediately to the faint shine on Lyra's back. The lamp nearly slipped from her hand. "By the goddess," she whispered. "The lost moonblood mark." Lyra blinked. "What?" Mira shut the door hard. "Cover it! Quickly!" She pulled a shawl around Lyra's shoulders and lowered her voice. "Listen to me, child. That mark belongs to a lineage that was wiped from history. If anyone sees it, they'll call you a monster. Worse, a threat to the crown." Lyra's pulse stuttered. "But I don't understand. Why me?" "The Moonbloods were the first wolves blessed by the goddess herself," Mira said, eyes darting to the door as if ghosts listened there. "Their power frightened kings. Your mother's line. She must have carried it hidden. The mark reveals itself only when destiny wakes." Destiny. The word tasted like both promise and doom. "What should I do?" "Hide it," Mira hissed. "No matter what happens, don't let anyone see. Especially the Alpha King." The warning lodged deep, but it was already too late. Far across the palace, Kael Draven stood on the terrace, restless. The night refused him sleep. His wolf prowled beneath his skin, agitated. "Something's wrong," Rydar growled in his mind. "She's calling to us." Kael closed his eyes, breathing in the wind. Faint, but unmistakable, a trace of moonfire, sweet and wild. It pulled at him like gravity. He turned toward the servants' wing before reason could argue. Down below, Lyra gripped the edge of her wash basin, fighting waves of pain as the mark pulsed again. Through the blur of tears, she saw the lantern flicker. The flame bent toward the window as if drawn by invisible force. And then, in the glass, a shadow appeared behind her reflection. "Couldn't sleep?" The voice was low, dangerous. She spun around. The Alpha King stood framed by moonlight, cloak unfastened, eyes gleaming silver. "My lord." He stepped forward, silencing her with a look. "Every time I close my eyes, I see you." His tone was not tender. It was accusation and confession at once. "What are you doing to me, little wolf?" Nothing." She pulled the shawl tighter, praying he wouldn't notice the heat seeping through it. Kyle's gaze sharpened. Lies again. He reached out before she could retreat, fingertips grazing the fabric at her shoulder. The moment he touched the edge, the mark flared bright beneath. Light filled the room, silver and gold, the color of prophecy. Kael staggered back, eyes wide. Rydar roared within him. "Moonblood." Lyra collapsed to her knees, clutching her arm. The glow dimmed, leaving silence so thick it rang. Kyle's voice came rough. "That symbol, it shouldn't exist." "I don't know what it means," she whispered. "Please don't tell anyone." He knelt beside her, torn between instinct and reason. "They would kill you for less." "Then why are you here?" Kael's jaw tightened. "Because I can't stay away." For a heartbeat, neither moved. The only sound was the ragged duet of their breathing. Then, from the corridor outside, came footsteps, guards making rounds. Kael rose swiftly, eyes flashing. "Meet me at dawn, in the old chapel beyond the courtyard. Tell no one." Before she could answer, he was gone, leaving only the echo of his command and the fading scent of storm. Lyra slumped against the wall, heart hammering. The healer's words circled in her mind. If anyone sees that mark, they'll kill you. But the Alpha King had seen, and instead of death, there had been recognition. Dawn crawled over Moonvale like spilled honey. The old chapel stood silent among ivy and ruin. Lyra slipped inside, hood drawn low. Kael waited by the altar, gloved hands braced on the stone. "You came," he said without turning. "You ordered." A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. "You're learning." He faced her fully, the early light catching the scar along his jaw. "That mark binds you to something far older than these petty kingdoms. My council must never know. They would see it as a claim, a threat." Lyra frowned. "Claim?" "Moonbloods were not just blessed," Kael said. "They were chosen as mates to kings by the goddess herself. Their bond could unite or destroy empires. If that mark reappears, the old prophecies awaken." The weight of his words sank in. "And you think I'm one of them?" "I know you are." His voice was almost reverent. "I felt it the night in the garden." Silence hung between them, thick with everything unspoken. Lyra took a step closer, eyes bright with defiance and fear. "If what you say is true, then why does it feel like a curse?" "Because power always comes as a curse first," he said softly, "until you learn to wield it." Outside, bells began to toll, the palace summoning all to the ceremonial blessing of the moon. Kael's expression hardened. "Go, before someone notices." "I'll see you again?" "You will," he promised, though the promise sounded like a warning. By midday, the courtyard blazed with sunlight. Nobles filled the marble steps, their laughter brittle under the weight of ritual. King Edrian presided, crown gleaming, daughters glittering at his side. Lyra stood among the servants, veil drawn low, trying to disappear. The heat beneath her skin pulsed again, stronger, angrier. She clenched her fists, whispering prayers under her breath. Then the drums began. Each beat reverberated through her chest, syncing with the rhythm of the mark. Light sparked beneath her shawl. She bit her lip to keep from crying out. Across the dais, Kael felt it too. His wolf surged, senses snapping to her like a compass finding true north. He moved before he thought, cutting through the crowd as whispers rose. Lyra swayed, the mark flared, bursting through fabric in a halo of gold. Gasps rippled through the assembly. "The cursed Omega," someone shouted. "She bears forbidden light." Guards reached for their blades, too slow. Kael was already there. His cloak swept around her as she collapsed, shielding the glow from sight. "Enough!" His voice cracked like thunder. "She's under my protection." King Edrian's face went pale. "Your Majesty, she is mine to judge," Kael snarled, and the crowd fell silent. He lifted Lyra easily, her head lolling against his chest. For the first time she looked weightless, almost peaceful, and then the world blurred. When she opened her eyes again, the marble ceiling was gone, replaced by carved stone and flickering candles. She lay on a bed of furs, the scent of rain and pine thick in the air. Strong arms encircled her, steadying her trembling form. Lyra blinked up, into silver eyes that watched her with something perilously close to awe. "You're safe," Kael said quietly. "For now." Her lips parted. "Where am I?" He hesitated. "Shadowcrest, my realm." Her breath caught. "You took me." "To keep you alive," he said. "They would have burned you before the moon set." She wanted to protest, but exhaustion dragged her under. The last thing she felt was his hand brushing a strand of hair from her face, and the low murmur of his wolf beneath his breath. "Fate has found us." And as darkness reclaimed her, the mark on her back pulsed once more, bright, defiant, unbroken. The storm came long before the thunder. It was the kind that carried no rain, only whispers, trembling on the edge of prophecy. Somewhere within Shadowcrest, deep beyond the walls of the Alpha King's fortress, the girl everyone once called the cursed Omega, woke to the sound of wolves howling in perfect unison. Their cry was mournful, and yet beneath it there was something else. Reverence. Lyra stirred. Her vision swam in gold and gray, her body aching as though she'd been reborn through fire. The furs beneath her felt foreign, too soft, too clean. The air smelled of smoke, rain, and male power, ancient and wild. Then she remembered. The feast. The light. His arms around her. Her heart leapt painfully. Kael. Her father's enemy. The Alpha King of Shadowcrest. The man who had stolen her away from Moonvale. Or saved her. She didn't know which anymore. A low growl echoed nearby, snapping her attention to the doorway. The massive stone doors were slightly ajar, letting in a slice of silver moonlight. Through it she saw him, standing bare-chested before the window, the glow outlining every muscle carved by battle and pain. Alpha Kael Draven, the man the world feared, the king who had never bowed to another. And yet in that moment he looked almost haunted. Lyra sat up too quickly, wincing as dizziness clawed at her. The sound drew his attention instantly. His eyes met hers, molten silver locking on gold. "You're awake," he said, voice rough, deep enough to rattle her bones. She flinched at the authority in it, but her own voice, though trembling, rose to meet it. "Why am I here?" Kael turned fully then, shadows wrapping him like armor. "Because you would be dead if you weren't." Her fingers dug into the blanket. "So you kidnapped me to protect me?" He took a step forward. "You think I had a choice? You exposed the Moonblood mark in front of half your kingdom. Do you know what that means?" Her throat tightened. "It means my life is ruined. It means," he said softly, "that your life just began." The air thickened. She could feel his wolf, Rydar, pacing just beneath his skin. The bond between them tugged, invisible yet undeniable. Every heartbeat seemed to echo between them, sinking against her will. "Take me back," she whispered. Kael's expression darkened. "If you go back, you die. Adrian won't let the Moonblood prophecy threaten his throne. You are his greatest sin made flesh." The truth struck harder than a blow. She turned away, trembling. "You don't know him." "Oh, I know your father," Kael cut in, voice low and sharp. "I know the blood he spilled, the lies he's told, the mate he murdered." She froze. Slowly, she faced him again. "What did you just say?" Kael's jaw flexed. For a heartbeat, he hesitated. Then his eyes softened, not with pity but with a sorrow that felt older than war. "My mate," he said quietly. "She was killed on your father's order." Silence. Cold and merciless. Lyra's lips parted, but no sound came out. "No, that can't be true." "He wanted Shadowcrest under his command," Kael continued, pacing slowly toward her. "When I refused, he sought to weaken me. His assassins found her before the next moonrise. I buried her beneath the black willows myself." Lyra's chest ached as if his grief were her own. She shook her head, tears burning behind her eyes. "I didn't know, I swear." "I know you didn't," he interrupted, voice gentler now. "You were just a child, but blood remembers, Lyra. And fate. Fate doesn't forget." He stopped a breath away. The distance between them buzzed with something dangerous, heat and destiny colliding. "I should hate you," Kael said almost to himself. "But every time I look at you, I see something that terrifies me more than hate." Lyra's breath hitched. "What do you see?" He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a growl that brushed against her skin. "A bond that shouldn't exist." Her wolf stirred beneath her ribs, answering his in a way she couldn't control. Her pulse roared in her ears. She stepped back, but he followed, slow, deliberate. "You can't keep me here," she said, though her voice betrayed her with its tremor. "Can't I?" he murmured, eyes flickering to gold. Tell me, little wolf, does your body believe that? The words sent a shiver through her entire being. She hated him for how easily he disarmed her, for how his presence felt like both danger and home. Before she could speak, the door burst open. A man strode in, tall, scarred, wearing the black crest of Shadow Guard. Your Majesty, the warrior said, bowing. The council demands explanation. They say you've abducted a royal Omega. Kael's gaze didn't leave Lyra's. Tell them what they need to hear. Which is? The guard asked cautiously. That she's my new servant, Kael replied coldly. Under personal training. Lyra gasped. Servant? His eyes flashed toward her. Would you rather they call you a witch and hang you by dawn? The guard left quickly and silence returned, heavier than before. Lyra's cheeks burned. You had no right. I had every right, he said, stepping closer again, his scent wrapping around her like smoke and storm. This way, no one touches you, no one questions why you're here. They fear me enough to obey. She glared up at him, defiant. And what happens when your council learns the truth? Kael smirked, though it didn't reach his eyes. By then, I'll know why the goddess marked you. The words lingered. A promise or a threat, she couldn't tell. Days turned into restless nights. Within Shadowcrest's dark halls, Lyra found herself trapped between fear and fascination. The fortress was vast, carved into the side of black mountains, surrounded by mist and wolves that guarded the borders like shadows. Everywhere she went, whispers followed her. The cursed Omega, the king's secret, the thief of fate. Kael kept his distance by day but watched her always, in the training yard, at the library, during moonlit council feasts where nobles bowed yet sneered behind silver goblets. He never called her servant again, though the others did. He corrected them with a single look. Still, every night she dreamed of the mark, glowing brighter, pulsing harder, as though responding to something in him. And one night, it answered. The crimson moon rose like blood spilled across the sky. Lyra stood alone on the balcony, the wind curling her hair as firelight danced across her skin. She closed her eyes, whispering her mother's dying words. Never forget who you are. Behind her, the air shifted. Her wolf stiffened in recognition. You shouldn't be here, she said softly. Kael's voice came from the dark. Neither should you. He stepped into the moonlight. No armor, no crown, only a rawness that stripped him bare. His gaze locked on her, the hunger in it barely leashed. Lyra turned, heart racing. You promised to keep your distance. I did. His tone deepened, rough, aching. But every time you breathe, I break that promise. She swallowed hard, caught in the storm of his presence. You said I was your prisoner. Kael's lips twisted into a ghost of a smile. Then why do I feel like the one in chains? He moved closer until the heat of him drowned the night. The crimson moon painted them both in sinful light. You shouldn't look at me like that, she whispered. Like what? Like you want to devour me. His breath brushed her ear. Maybe I do. Her pulse faltered. The mark on her back burned, alive, radiant. Kael's control snapped. He reached for her, pulling her against him. Their bodies collided, every inch of distance erased in an instant. You drive me mad, Lyra, he rasped, voice shaking. I can't think, can't breathe. Then stop fighting it, she whispered, though she didn't know if she meant him or herself. He tilted her chin, eyes blazing. If I mark you, there's no going back. Then don't, she breathed, though the plea trembled between want and fear. His lips hovered inches from hers. Tell me to stop. But she couldn't. Her wolf howled inside her, wild, yearning. The bond thrummed so violently the air itself seemed to shiver. Kael lowered his head, his teeth grazing the curve of her neck, where her pulse beat frantic and pure. His wolf roared within him, desperate to claim, to seal what fate had begun. Then, the mark flared. Blinding light erupted between them, throwing Kael back with a snarl of agony. His eyes widened, not in pain but in horror. On her skin, the crescent mark blazed brighter than ever, but this time, within it, another symbol appeared. A crown of fire. Kael's wolf recoiled, snarling. She's not just Moonblood, she's the lost heir. Lyra collapsed, trembling. Kael staggered forward, fear twisting through his chest like a blade. "What are you?" he whispered. Lyra's eyes glowed gold. "I think," the goddess just answered. And as the crimson moon bathed them both in its cursed light, fate laughed softly, for neither of them knew what it would demand next. For the first time, Alpha Kael Draven, the beast of Shadowcrest, realized he hadn't stolen the Omega Princess. Fate had stolen Dawn came pale and bruised over the black spires of Shadowcrest. The fortress breathed mist and silence, as if even the wind held its breath after what the crimson moon had witnessed. Kael hadn't slept. He stood on the battlements, cloak whipping like a shadow's wing. The memory of the light haunted him, the way her mark had burned through the night, searing prophecy into his eyes. A crown of fire. Rydar, his wolf, prowled restlessly beneath his skin. "She carries the goddess's blood." "You felt it." Kael's hands tightened on the stone. "I felt damnation." Below in the healer's wing, Lyra woke to the echo of distant bells. Her skin ached where the mark had blazed, but her heart ached more. She had seen terror in Kael's eyes. Terror, not of her, but for her. And that frightened her most. Mira, the Shadowcrest healer, hovered at her side. "The Alpha ordered you to rest," she said, pressing a cup of moonroot tea into Lyra's hands. "Your power nearly consumed you." "My power?" Lyra whispered. "I don't even understand it." "Then learn." Mira's gaze softened. "Because the world will not wait for your understanding." By midday, the council hall thundered with argument. Torches burned blue, ancient banners of silver and black rippled above carved wolves. "You risk war," snarled Lord Varen, one of Kael's elders. "Moonvale will demand blood for this abduction." Kael's voice was calm, colder than ice. "Let them demand. They call her cursed." "They called me cursed once," Kael replied, eyes narrowing. "And I'm still standing." The hall quieted. He rose from the obsidian throne, silver eyes cutting through the smoke. "She stays. Under my protection. No one touches her unless I command it." "And if she turns on you?" Kael's lips curved in something too dark to be a smile. "Then the goddess herself will decide which of us burns first." Lyra was given a chamber overlooking the eastern courtyard, a cage made of beauty. She watched from the window as warriors trained below, their blades flashing in rhythm with the drumbeat of war. Kael appeared among them, stripped of rank and crown, fighting barehanded against 3 opponents. His movements were violence sculpted into grace. Each strike told a story of loss, every parry a vow unbroken. When his gaze lifted to hers, time stalled. She turned away first, breath trembling. Moments later, a knock came. It was Mira again. "The Alpha has ordered your training to begin. He says if you're to survive Shadowcrest, you must learn to fight like one of us." Lyra blinked. "Fight?" Mira handed her a bundle, black leathers lined with faint silver thread. "Or die trying." The training yard smelled of dust and steel. Shadows lengthened across the walls as Lyra stepped in, feeling eyes on her from every direction. Warriors muttered, some sneered, an Omega among Alphas. Kael tossed her a wooden blade. "Show me what you can do." "I'm not a soldier." "Then learn to become one," he said, circling her like a predator testing prey. Again. She swung, missed, stumbled. He caught her wrist, spun her around, forcing her to find balance. "Stop thinking," he growled. "Listen to your wolf." "My wolf's silent." "Then make her scream." Something inside her snapped. She moved, faster, sharper. The wood cracked against his guard. Sparks of pride flickered in his eyes. Hours passed until exhaustion blurred everything but the rhythm of breath and heartbeat. When she finally collapsed, he knelt beside her, offering a hand. Better. Her laughter broke through the dusk, small and unexpected. Better. I nearly hit you in the face. He almost smiled. Almost. For the first time, warmth slipped between them. Fragile, dangerous. The warriors watching pretended not to see. That night, Lyra found sleep easily for the first time since the abduction. She dreamed of running through forests of silver bark, Kael's shadow keeping pace beside her. But when the dream shattered, she woke to real screams echoing through the fortress. Assassins. Steel clashed beyond her door. She grabbed the dagger from her bedside and burst into the corridor. Flames licked the walls. The scent of blood thickened the air. Kael met her halfway, sword slick with crimson. "Stay behind me." "No," she shouted, shoving him aside as another blade lunged from the smoke. Instinct roared awake inside her. The mark flared white gold. Light exploded outward. The assassin froze mid-strike, eyes wide as veins of gold crawled up his arm. The metal of his sword melted into dust. Lyra gasped, staggering as the glow consumed the hallway. When it faded, silence reigned. The intruders lay unconscious, weapons turned to ash. Kael stared at her like a man seeing divinity and destruction intertwined. "What did you do?" he whispered. I don't know." Blood dripped from a shallow wound along his ribs. Without thinking, she pressed her hand there. The light returned, softer this time, sealing the cut as though it had never existed. His breath caught. "That's impossible." Apparently not. For a heartbeat, they just looked at each other, Alpha and supposed Omega, Predator and Miracle. The council convened again before dawn. Bodies of the assassins were laid at their feet, each marked with Moonvale's crest. "They came for her," said Lord Varen. "Adrian wants his daughter, or her corpse." Kael's gaze didn't waver. "He'll get neither." Varen leaned forward. "You can't shield her forever. That power, whatever she is, it will consume this realm." Kael rose. "Then I'll burn with it before I let him touch her." He left the hall before anyone dared answer. In the infirmary, Lyra sat beside the sleeping forms of wounded guards she had healed without realizing how. Mira entered quietly, eyes shining with awe. "Your power saved half the fortress." Lyra's hands trembled. "I didn't mean to. You can't hide it anymore," the healer said softly. "Kael will have to bind you before the council demands your blood." "Bind me?" "A blood oath," Mira explained. "Old magic. It links your life to his protection. If you die, he dies. No one would dare move against you then." Lyra swallowed hard. "And if he refuses, then your power will kill you before the next moon." That evening, the throne room stood empty except for them. Candles burned low, wax pooling like blood. Kael faced her across the marble floor. "They say I must bind you to me." "I heard." Her voice was steady, though her pulse wasn't. "Will you?" He looked away. "A blood oath is not a promise, Lyra. It's a curse shared between souls." "Then share it." His head snapped toward her. "You don't know what you're asking. I know I'm tired of being hunted. I know you're tired of losing." She stepped closer, eyes gleaming gold. "Maybe the curse ends with us." The word struck something deep in him. Slowly, he drew a dagger from his belt, the same blade used in coronations of kings. "Once begun, it cannot be undone," he warned. "I'm not afraid." Neither was he, though he should have been. He sliced his palm, crimson welling. She did the same. When their hands met, blood mingled, hot, electric, alive. Ancient runes ignited around them, coiling through the air like serpents of light. Their wolves howled in unison, one sound splitting the night. Kael's knees buckled under the surge. Visions crashed into him. Lyra crowned in silver flame, Moonvale crumbling, the goddess weeping stars. When the light dimmed, their hands remained joined. The blood on their skin turned to gold. Lyra swayed. Kael caught her, breath ragged. "It's done," he murmured. Outside, thunder rolled across the horizon, answering the vow they'd made. Days passed. Lyra trained harder, faster. The warriors no longer sneered. They bowed. Kael watched from the shadows, pride flickering through his guarded silence. One afternoon, while she laughed with a young soldier who'd complimented her aim, Kael's chest tightened with something he refused to name. When she noticed him, her laughter faded into something gentler, an understanding neither dared speak. But fate never allowed peace for long. Scouts arrived from the border bearing grim news. Moonvale's armies had moved. The war her father threatened was coming. Kael ordered defenses, rallied his wolves, and that night, under stormlit skies, sought Lyra in the temple of the goddess. She stood before the ancient statue, her mark glowing faintly. "You knew this would happen," she said without turning. "Yes. And you still bound yourself to me." He exhaled. "I had no choice." She faced him then, eyes luminous. "There's always a choice." Kael stepped closer, the weight of prophecy pressing down on them both. "You are the choice," he said quietly, "and I will bear whatever damnation comes with it." Lightning cracked, illuminating their faces, two souls tethered by fate and blood. The mark on her back blazed brighter than ever, symbols unfolding like wings. Kael dropped to one knee, not out of weakness, but reverence. His voice trembled as he whispered, "You're not an Omega." The light crowned her in silver fire. "You're the true heir of the moon goddess." And somewhere far away, the Moonvale King woke from uneasy dreams, feeling the first tear in his empire's destiny. They said destiny could be rewritten. But what happens when destiny itself comes to claim you? When the crimson moon rose that night, the air itself trembled, as though the heavens held their breath. The forest surrounding the Shadowcrest stronghold pulsed with energy, alive with whispers of the unseen. Wolves howled in the distance, but even they sounded different, reverent, almost fearful. In the heart of the fortress stood Lyra Vale, the once-forgotten Omega princess, her silver hair catching the flicker of torchlight like spilled moonfire. Only hours ago she had been running for her life, fleeing the court that branded her a curse. But now, she stood wrapped in shadows and mystery, before the one man the entire realm feared and revered. Alpha Kael Draven, the Alpha King of Shadowcrest, conqueror of realms, breaker of bloodlines, and the only man whose presence could silence a crowd with a single glance. His eyes, those deep, storm-gray eyes, studied her like she was the answer to a question he had been chasing for centuries. But Lyra could not hold his gaze for long. She felt it again, that hum beneath her skin, the same strange pulse that had begun when his name was first spoken in the Moonvale court. It wasn't fear. It was something far more dangerous. "Who are you?" Kael's voice was low, the kind that rumbled through the air and touched the edges of the soul. Lyra bowed her head. "No one, my king." A faint smirk curved his lips. "No one does not awaken the Bloodstone's call." He lifted a black shard from the table, a relic that glowed faintly crimson in his hand. The moment the stone caught Lyra's reflection, it flared, pulsing with the same rhythm as her heartbeat. Gasps filled the chamber. The guards exchanged uneasy glances. The Bloodstone was ancient, a relic forged from moonlight and shadow. It only reacted to one thing: the true heir of the eclipsed bloodline. Kael's eyes narrowed. "Impossible." Lyra stumbled back. "I don't understand." He took a step closer, and the ground seemed to hum beneath his boots. "You bear the mark of the forbidden lineage. Your scent carries the echo of the first Moon Queen." "The... what?" "The queen who betrayed the goddess," Kael said softly. "The one who tried to cage the Alpha King of old." Lyra's breath caught. "That's just a legend." Kael's gaze darkened. "Legends are only truths the world fears to remember." He moved toward her until the distance between them vanished into tension and silence. His presence surrounded her, not crushing, but consuming. Her wolf stirred inside her chest, trembling, whispering his name over and over like a prayer she didn't remember learning. "Why does it feel like I know you?" Lyra whispered. Kael's jaw clenched. "Because once, before the curse was born, you did?" The air thickened. Lightning split the sky outside, casting white fire through the stained windows. And then, everything changed. The moon turned red. Every torch flickered out. Every guard dropped to one knee as power rolled through the room like a storm unleashed. Kael's mark burned across his hand, a sigil of the wolf and the flame. Lyra gasped as her wrist glowed with its mirror. The bond, ancient, forbidden, and unbreakable, had awakened. Kael's eyes widened, not in triumph, but in disbelief. "No, it can't be." Lyra staggered. "What's happening to me?" "The moon goddess has chosen," Kael said, voice breaking with something that almost sounded like fear. "You are my fated mate." But instead of joy, silence filled the space, a silence so heavy it seemed to swallow the light. Because for Alpha Kael Draven, the prophecy was clear. When the cursed Omega and the King of Shadows share a bond, the red moon will rise and blood will follow. He reached for her, but Lyra stepped back. "A curse," she whispered. "That's what they always called me." Outside, thunder cracked. The walls trembled. Kael's advisors rushed in, shouting warnings. The Moonvale scouts had crossed the border. Lyra's past was coming for her. Kael turned to her, eyes fierce. "You must stay hidden. They will kill you before dawn if they know what you are." But Lyra lifted her chin. Something had shifted inside her. The timid girl who scrubbed floors in royal kitchens was gone. In her place stood something far stronger, the daughter of the Moonvale Queen, the heir of a forgotten prophecy. "I've hidden my whole life," she said, her voice low but steady. "Not anymore." Kael's wolf surged beneath his skin, restless, protective, wild. "You don't know what power you hold, Lyra. The bloodstone doesn't just reveal, it remembers." "What do you mean?" He hesitated, then pressed the bloodstone into her palm. "Touch it. Touch it." The world exploded in light. Lyra's mind filled with visions, her mother weeping beneath the silver moon, a throne bathed in fire, a man with Kael's eyes reaching for her as shadows tore them apart. When the light faded, Lyra gasped, clutching her chest. "I saw us." Kael's voice was a whisper. "Because it was us, the first king and queen. We were cursed to be reborn, to find each other again, until the bond is restored or destroyed." Lyra trembled. "And if we fail?" Kael's gaze met hers, heavy with truth. "Then the world burns." A knock shattered the moment. A scout entered, breathless. "My king, Moonvale troops have surrounded the forest." Kael turned to his generals. "Prepare the wards. No one enters without my command." He looked back at Lyra, and for a heartbeat, the mighty Alpha King looked human. "Whatever happens, stay by my side. Do you understand?" She nodded, and yet something deep inside her whispered that this was only the beginning. The red moonlight poured through the windows, bathing them both in its haunting glow. Two souls bound by fate, cursed by prophecy, and hunted by blood. Lyra's wolf stirred once more. The same word echoed in her chest, clear and trembling like the first time she saw him. "Mate." And as the night deepened, the prophecy began to breathe. The forest howled, the bloodstone pulsed, and far above the clouds, the moon goddess watched, silent, waiting for the moment the bond beneath the red moon would either save the world or end it. The night the red moon refused to fade, the world began to break. Its glow still lingered over the forests of Shadowcrest, bathing the land in a ghostly scarlet light that refused to die with dawn. The air was heavy, too heavy, with the scent of prophecy and blood. Lyra Vale stood at the balcony of Kael's fortress, staring toward the far horizon. Beyond the mist lay Moonvale, her home, her prison, her wound. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Kael's voice rumbled behind her. Lyra didn't turn. "I've been ready my whole life. I just didn't know it." The Alpha King studied her, the way her silver hair shimmered under the blood-hued sky, the way her eyes burned with something no longer fragile. This was no longer the timid Omega who once served scraps in her father's kitchen. This was something else, something the moon itself had begun to fear. Kael stepped closer. "Your father will not hesitate, Lyra. He fears what you are, and what you might become." "Then he should be afraid," she whispered, "because I'm done hiding." By sunset, the Shadowcrest army was ready. Wolves in obsidian armor lined the valley. Banners bearing Kael's mark, the wolf and flame, fluttered in the storm wind. At the front, Kael mounted his black warhorse, his aura radiating command. Beside him, Lyra climbed atop her white mare, her cloak snapping in the wind like a living thing. The march to Moonvale began. Thunder rolled, trees bowed. The red moon followed them like an omen. For 2 days they crossed through haunted woods and abandoned villages, remnants of a kingdom that had once thrived under Queen Serenia, Lyra's mother. But now, those lands whispered her name like a ghost story. And on the third night, Moonvale rose before them, a fortress of ivory towers and silver walls, wrapped in enchantments that shimmered like glass. It was beautiful and cruel. Lyra's chest tightened. Memories stabbed through her like blades, her father's cold eyes, her sister's laughter, the feel of ashes in her hands as she scrubbed the palace floors. Kael reached over, his hand brushing hers. "You don't have to face him alone." She met his gaze, and for a fleeting second, warmth bloomed. "Yes, I do." The gates of Moonvale opened before dawn, but not by welcome, by war. Arrows rained from the battlements. Kael's wolves roared, shields raised. The battlefield ignited with chaos. Steel against fang, fire against magic. Lyra dismounted, her eyes glowing faint gold as her wolf stirred beneath her skin. She moved through the storm of blades like a phantom, graceful, untouchable. For every soldier that swung at her, another dropped his weapon in awe. Her presence wasn't mortal anymore. It was divine. At the heart of the palace, on his gleaming throne, waited King Edrian Vale, her father. He hadn't aged. His hair still silvered like frost, his eyes the same cold blue that once looked through her as if she were nothing. "So the cursed child returns," he said, voice echoing like poisoned silk. "And she brings the Shadow King to my gates." Lyra walked forward, slow and deliberate. "You killed my mother." Edrian smiled, the kind that made the air itself recoil. "She was weak. She loved the goddess more than her throne, so I took both." Kael's growl thundered through the hall. "You betrayed the blood oath." Edrian rose. "I did what was necessary to rule. Do you think Moonvale needed another soft-hearted queen whispering to the stars? No, it needed strength. My strength. Your strength," Lyra spat, "was stolen through blood." His eyes glimmered. "And yours will be too." With a wave of his hand, the floor cracked open. From the depths rose chains forged of silver and shadow, forbidden magic, the kind outlawed since the First War. They wrapped around Kael before he could move, binding his arms, burning into his skin. He roared, his power shaking the hall, but silver devoured strength, searing his veins. He fell to one knee, snarling in agony. "Kael!" Lyra screamed, rushing to him. But Edrian's laughter stopped her. "You see now? The Alpha King kneels before Moonvale. You thought love could rewrite prophecy?" Lyra's heart cracked open. The scent of burning flesh filled the air as Kael fought the chains, but each struggle only drew more blood. "Stop it," she shouted. "You'll kill him." Adrian's smile turned crueler. That is the point. Behind him, movement. Lyra's sisters stepped from the shadows. Selene, the eldest, wore her golden armor proudly, though her eyes flickered with guilt. Beside her, Arden, the younger, trembled, clutching her blade. "Father, please," Arden whispered. "Let him go." Adrian's gaze sliced toward her. "Silence, child, or you'll join your mother in the grave." Lyra's fury snapped. "She's your daughter." "So is your mother," he said coldly, "and look what happened to her." Something inside Lyra broke. The room pulsed with her heartbeat. The torches flickered, then exploded. Her wolf stirred, rising, stretching, awake. "Lyra, no," Kael rasped. "Don't, he'll use it." But it was too late. The moonblood within her, that ancient power the goddess sealed away, burst free. Her eyes turned molten gold. Her hair lifted in an unseen wind. The floor cracked beneath her as light and shadow swirled around her body, twisting into a vortex of divine fury. Adrian stepped back. "What? What are you?" Lyra's voice was no longer just hers. It carried the echo of 1,000 queens. "I am what you tried to destroy." Then she shifted. Not into the silver wolf of her birthright, but into something the world had never seen. A golden wolf, glowing with lunar fire, her eyes twin suns burning through the darkness. The guards fled. The palace trembled. Every painting of the old kings cracked and fell from the walls. Adrian screamed, summoning his forbidden power. Black smoke coiling around him, claws of shadow tearing through the air. But Lyra was faster. Her roar shattered the throne itself. She lunged, a golden flash through darkness, and the shadows dissolved like mist. Selene fell to her knees, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Sister, what have you done?" Lyra stood amid ruin, chest heaving, fur shimmering with starlight. "What I had to." Her gaze softened for a heartbeat as she turned to Kael, still bound, still bleeding. She tore through the silver chains with a single swipe of her claw, breaking them like paper. He collapsed into her arms, weak but alive. Their foreheads touched, blood and light mingling. "I told you," he whispered hoarsely, "the world would burn." She smiled, sad, fierce, radiant. "Then let it burn." The palace walls split. Fire consumed the tapestries. Moonvale, once the pride of the kingdom, crumbled into ash beneath the red moon. Outside, the armies watched in awe as the ivory towers fell, and from the heart of the inferno rose the silhouette of a golden wolf, her howl echoing through every corner of the realm. The prophecy had begun to fulfill itself, not in silence, but in fire. Kael looked up at her through the smoke, eyes wide with something like reverence. Lyra. But Lyra was no longer just Lyra. She was something older, something eternal. The reborn queen of the Moonblood line, daughter of light and vengeance. And as the flames devoured the last of Moonvale's thrones, her voice echoed through the chaos. From the ashes of the old kingdom, a new queen will rise. The smoke had not yet cleared when Lyra heard Kael's breathing falter. The battlefield, what was left of Moonvale, lay in ruin. Silver dust rained from the shattered palace, falling like dead snow over the corpses of kings. Her power still crackled through the air, wild and divine, untamed. The golden light that had burned from her skin was fading now, dimming with every breath. But Kael was dying. She could smell it. The bitter tang of silver and moonfire, laced in the wounds carved deep into his chest. His once mighty aura flickered like a candle in storm wind. "Stay with me," she whispered, kneeling beside him, her trembling hands brushing his face. His skin was pale, too pale, veins glowing faintly where the poison coursed through him. He tried to speak, but blood filled his throat. You burned it all." Tears shimmered in her golden eyes. "I had to." His smile was faint, ghost-like. And I told you, the world would burn. She pressed her forehead to his, her fingers shaking. You promised me forever. He coughed, and a drop of blood slid down his chin, glowing silver under the moonlight. Forever just changed its meaning. The wind carried the cries of her army beyond the ruins. Wolves howled in mourning. The red moon, the eternal witness of her curse, watched in silence. Lyra lifted her gaze. Around her, the palace lay in pieces, her father's throne shattered, her sisters gone into shadow. For a fleeting moment, she felt nothing. No victory, no relief, just the hollow ache of a queen who'd won too much, too late. Then something inside her began to crack. Her power, the moonblood, throbbed beneath her skin, pulsing with grief and rage. She could feel it crawling upward, whispering in her mind, "Take it all. Claim what's left. Rule the ashes." Lyra clenched her fists. No. But the whisper grew louder, seductive, poisonous, ancient. You were born to be worshipped, to be feared, to finish what he began. Visions flickered before her eyes. Her father's sneer, her mother's fall, Kael's dying breath. Power hummed at her fingertips, asking to be unleashed again. The golden light around her shimmered darker, tarnished by sorrow. A tremor shook the earth. The soldiers below fell to their knees, not in battle this time, but in reverence. She's ascended, someone whispered. The Queen of Shadows, another breathed, and in that moment Lyra realized what she had become. Not the heir of Moonvale, not the daughter of Edrian Vale. She was the curse and the crown, the living bridge between light and ruin. The golden fire of her magic twisted into black flame, circling her like an eclipse. Every heartbeat echoed like thunder. Kael groaned, his voice barely audible. Lyra. She turned, eyes wide, her irises no longer gold, but void black. I'm here. Don't let it take you, he rasped. You're stronger than your curse. Her lips trembled. I don't know if I am. He smiled weakly, reaching for her hand. Then be stronger than me. Something shattered inside her. She screamed, not from pain but from love. A raw, soul-breaking sound that made the stars flicker. The black fire around her recoiled, as if the heavens themselves feared her grief. Then she rose. Her gown, torn and blood-stained, reformed into a dark coronation robe, woven from smoke and starlight. The crown of her mother's line appeared on her brow, reforged by divine fire, its silver edges dripping molten gold. When she spoke, her voice was both melody and blade. Bring me those who betrayed my blood. The shadows obeyed. From the ruins, spectral wolves emerged. Her new court, her vengeance made flesh. They dragged forth the surviving lords who had mocked her claim to the throne. Their armor clanged against the stones as they knelt before her trembling. Mercy, your majesty, one cried. We swore allegiance. She cut him off with a glance. Her gaze alone silenced him. His voice froze in his throat as frost bloomed over his lips. Allegiance, she said softly, her tone a whisper that carried like thunder. You knelt to my father when he burned my mother alive. You feasted while the moon wept. Her hand lifted, and a shard of golden fire formed between her fingers. Now you'll feast on the ashes you made. The fire consumed him, not with agony, but beauty. His body turned to shimmering dust, carried by the wind. The others screamed, but she did not waver. One by one she judged them, not as executioner, but as goddess. And when it was done, the hall fell silent again. Lyra stood amidst the ruin, her expression unreadable. The air around her shimmered with sacred power, and the faintest trace of sorrow. Kael watched from where he lay, his vision dimming. You are magnificent. She turned to him, her crown glinting under the dying moon. You're bleeding out, my king. He tried to laugh, but the sound broke into a cough. It suits me. Lyra knelt beside him again. Don't speak. He gripped her wrist. You have to stop it, Lyra. The curse, it's eating you alive. She looked down at her hands. The veins beneath her skin glowed black now, her magic tainted. She could feel her pulse fading beneath its weight. What if this is who I am? She whispered. What if my father was right? That love is weakness. Kael smiled faintly. Then be weak for me. Her breath caught. He brushed his thumb over her cheek, smearing blood and tears together. Don't become your curse, he murmured. Become my light. The world stilled, and for the first time since the red moon rose, Lyra felt something pure break through the darkness. Hope. Fragile, dangerous, but real. She placed her hands over his wound. Then let me try. The moonfire pulsed, answering her call. She drew her power from the depths of her soul. Every memory, every drop of pain, every heartbeat she had left. The curse screamed within her, fighting to stay. Lyra, stop, Kael gasped. You'll die. Her tears fell onto his chest, glowing as they touched his skin. Then I'll die loving you. Light erupted, not gold, not silver, but something beyond both. The heavens roared as her magic poured into him, burning away the poison, rewriting the curse. Her veins turned to glass, her heart flickering between life and death. Lyra. His voice was the last thing she heard before the world exploded into silence. When the light faded, Kael lay still. The silver veins on his chest were gone, healed. But Lyra was motionless beside him, her body cold, her crown cracked. The wolves began to howl, mourning their queen. Kael stirred, weak but alive. He gathered her in his arms, pressing his forehead to hers. No, 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 he whispered. You gave it all. Her lips parted faintly, a ghost of a smile. That's what queens do. Then her eyes fluttered shut. The moon above them shuddered, and for the first time in 1,000 years its light went out. Darkness fell across the realm. When Lyra opened her eyes again, he was gone. And the moon had turned dark. The moon had gone dark. The night had swallowed its light, and the world had begun to forget what warmth felt like. Lyra ruled beneath that darkness. For months the kingdom of Moonvale, what little of it remained, had lived beneath the eternal eclipse. Crops wilted under the dim sky, rivers ran sluggish and cold, and wolves howled not for battle, but for their lost king. Yet she endured, the queen of shadows, the Moonblood heir, the woman who traded her soul for the man she loved. Every dawn, she stood at the balcony of the rebuilt palace, her mother's crown, reforged in obsidian and gold, resting heavy upon her head. Her gaze was fixed on the horizon, on the pale scar of the sun that never fully rose. The world bowed to her. Yet her eyes, those haunting shades of molten amber and midnight, held nothing but longing. Kael's chambers remained untouched. His armor hung by the wall, his cloak still draped over the chair, as if he would walk in any moment. The bed where he once held her lay cold, preserved in memory. She ruled a kingdom of ghosts. Her court spoke her name with reverence and fear. The lords called her Your Radiance. The wolves called her Mother of the Eclipse. But in the stillness of night, when the torches dimmed and the wind carried only silence, she whispered to herself, Lyra, just Lyra. And somewhere, faint and broken, the goddess listened. The night of the moon festival. 6 months passed before the stars dared return. It was the eve of the moon festival, a night once filled with dance, music, and the scent of blooming silver lilies. Tradition demanded that the queen light the lunar flame atop the Temple of Shadows to call upon the moon goddess for blessings of fertility, unity, and renewal. Lyra had not attended the ceremony since Kael's death. But that night, something stirred within her, a pull, deep and familiar, like the echo of a heartbeat she thought she'd buried. Your Majesty, whispered Selene, her handmaiden, bowing low. The people await. Shall we cancel the festival? Lyra rose from her throne. No, we light the flame tonight. Her voice carried the quiet authority of thunder before the storm. She wore black silk threaded with gold, the hem of her gown whispering secrets across the floor. Around her throat hung Kael's pendant, the sigil of the Shadow King. She had never taken it off. As she stepped onto the temple steps, thousands of wolves knelt below, their heads bowed, their eyes glistening under the dim moonlight. The air trembled with anticipation. Lyra lifted her torch toward the brazier, but as the fire met the flame, the world stopped breathing. A gust of wind swept across the courtyard. The torches flickered out. The flame refused to catch. Then, a sound, a heartbeat. Not hers. Deep, strong, unyielding. Her breath caught. The torch fell from her hand, and in the silence that followed, she heard it again. That familiar, impossible rhythm, pulsing through the night. Kael. The name slipped from her lips like prayer. The crowd stirred. Whispers rippled through the masses as the clouds parted for the first time in half a year. And there, beneath the shattering darkness, light returned. Not sunlight, not fire, moonlight. The moon blazed silver again, whole and luminous, as if reborn, and with it, so was he. At first she thought it was an illusion, a cruel trick of grief. But then the scent hit her. Smoke, rain, pine, and power. She turned. From the forest beyond the temple steps, a shadow moved, tall, broad, slow as destiny. Armor gleamed faintly beneath the moon's rebirth. His eyes, that impossible storm gray, locked onto hers. Her world shattered. He walked through the crowd, each step echoing like the beat of ancient drums. The wolves parted before him, bowing without command. The lords dropped to their knees. The Alpha King had returned. Lyra's heart pounded as she descended the stairs, each movement trembling between disbelief and hunger. When they stood before each other, the night fell utterly silent. Kael, she breathed, tears spilling before she could stop them. You're alive, he whispered, voice rough with rebirth. Because you gave me life. And before she could speak, his hands were on her waist, pulling her into him, the way the storm reclaims the sea. Their lips met, desperate, furious, forgiving, a kiss that tore through time itself. The crowd roared, howled, wept, as the moon flared above them in brilliant silver fire. Lyra broke away, her hands trembling against his chest. The goddess... She said it wasn't my time, he murmured, pressing his forehead to hers. That love this fierce doesn't die. It transforms. She laughed through tears, brushing his jawline. You're real. He smirked softly. Do ghosts kiss like this? Then he kissed her again, deeper, hungrier, a collision of two halves finally whole. The moonlight poured down, bathing them in divine glow. The crowd began to chant, Lyra and Kael, Lyra and Kael, their voices rising like thunder through the valley. Rebirth of the kingdom. The days that followed were legend. Together, they rebuilt what centuries of curse had destroyed. Lyra's dark wolves and Kael's shadow guard united. Two armies forged from light and night. Old rivalries dissolved. Packs that once fought for dominance now knelt side by side beneath the new banner, the Eclipsed Union. A symbol of balance between love and power, between Alpha and Queen. Lyra stood beside Kael as equals, no longer cursed, no longer haunted. The goddess herself appeared during their coronation, her voice echoing through every heart in the realm. The prophecy is fulfilled. Two souls divided by shadow and flame now reign as one. The world shall know peace under the Moonblood Queen and her Shadow King. Kael lifted Lyra's hand before the crowd, his gaze fierce and adoring. No longer the lost Omega, he declared, but the Queen who burned heaven and hell to save us all. The people bowed. Even the stars seemed to kneel. That night they celebrated beneath the full moon, a moon restored, whole and bright. Music filled the courtyard, laughter echoing through walls once soaked in blood. Lyra danced with Kael beneath the starlit sky, her bare feet brushing the marble, her laughter pure and radiant. For the first time she felt free, but even in joy there was desire. When the music faded and the last toast was made, Kael led her away, up the winding stairs of the moon tower, to the chamber that overlooked the valley. The moment the door closed behind them, silence returned, heavy, electric. Lyra's breath caught as he approached, his eyes dark with promise. "You died for me," he murmured, tracing her jawline. "Now let me live for you." Her pulse fluttered. "You don't owe me anything." He smiled, that slow, dangerous smile that once melted her resolve. "You're right, but I want to give you everything anyway." He kissed her, soft at first, then deeper, until her knees weakened, and her hands tangled in his hair. The scent of pine and moonfire filled the air. "Kael," she whispered against his lips. He lifted her, carrying her to the balcony where the silver moon watched over them. "Say it again." "Kael." The way she said his name, it wasn't a word, it was a spell. Their love ignited again, no longer desperate or doomed, but eternal. Flesh and spirit, power and peace, all blending like light and shadow reborn. The moon glowed brighter, blessing them in silence. When dawn finally came, Lyra woke beside him, tangled in silk and warmth. For the first time, the world was still. The curse was gone. Kael brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You know what this means?" She smiled sleepily. "That we won?" He shook his head. "That you did?" Her laugh was soft, luminous. "We both did." He kissed her forehead. "My queen of shadows." She met his gaze, eyes glimmering with love and mischief. "And you, my king of light." Outside the kingdom stirred, banners rising, children laughing, wolves running free. The moon hung above, serene and whole. Lyra rose from the bed, stepping to the window, Kael's cloak draped around her shoulders. She looked out at her world, rebuilt, reborn. "Once," she whispered, "they mocked me. They called me the Omega Princess." Kael joined her, his arm wrapping around her waist. "And now?" he murmured. She turned to him, a smile curving her lips, regal, radiant, untouchable. "Now," she said, her voice echoing across the dawn, "every knee bows before the Moonblood Queen." The years rolled by like gentle waves under the moonlight. Peace had returned to Moonvale, not the fragile peace of silence after war, but the kind that thrived in laughter, in love, in the quiet hum of life reborn. Where ashes once ruled, gardens now bloomed. Where the cries of the dying once echoed, songs of new beginnings filled the air. At the heart of this reborn kingdom stood the great palace, no longer of gold or obsidian but carved from moonstone and silver glass. Its walls shimmered under the moon's glow, reflecting both day and night, a perfect balance, just like the souls who ruled it. Lyra and Kael, the eternal alpha pair, the queen of shadows and the king of light. Their reign was legend, not for the wars they ended, nor the curses they broke, but for the love that rewrote the laws of gods and mortals alike. One dawn, as the first snow of spring kissed the palace courtyard, a cry echoed through the halls, a cry that changed everything. Lyra held a child in her arms, a daughter, wrapped in silk the color of twilight. Her eyes, when they opened, glowed like molten gold rimmed with silver, and upon her tiny brow shimmered a faint crescent mark, the sign of the goddess. Kael, kneeling beside the bed, could barely speak. His rough warrior's hands trembled as he touched their daughter's cheek. "She's perfect," he whispered. Lyra smiled, tears glistening on her lashes. "Her name will be Orin, the dawn between shadow and light." The moment the name left her lips, the moonlight brightened, as if blessing the child. Oren cooed softly, her little fingers curling around her father's hand, and for the first time, Kael felt something even greater than victory. Legacy. That night, as the palace slept, Lyra stood by the balcony with Oren in her arms. The wind was cool and filled with the scent of pine and silver lilies. Kael came up behind her, wrapping his arms around them both. "She carries both our bloodlines," Lyra whispered. "Moonblood and Shadowcrest. She will unite them, forever." Kael smiled against her hair. "And she'll remind the world what we fought for." Lyra's voice softened, her tone almost reverent. "That love isn't weakness. It's the most dangerous kind of strength." Years passed like chapters of a story too beautiful to end. Oren grew fast, faster than any child of her age. She trained with the wolves by dawn, studied ancient runes by dusk, and listened to her mother's stories under the light of the moon. One evening she came running into the throne room, her silver gold eyes wide with questions only a child could ask. "Mother," she said, clutching a piece of parchment, "the elders say power is something you take, something you fight for. Is that true?" Lyra knelt before her, her gown pooling like liquid night around her feet. The air shimmered faintly, the goddess's presence always near. "Come," Lyra said, leading her daughter to the balcony overlooking the valley. The moon hung full and proud above them. "Look out there. What do you see?" Oren tilted her head. "The kingdom, the wolves, the forests. And what do they all have in common?" The little girl frowned, thinking. "They survived." Lyra smiled, that same smile that once disarmed kings and terrified gods. "Exactly. Power isn't born from strength or status, my love. It's born from surviving what tried to break you." Oren looked up at her, wide-eyed. "Like you and father?" Lyra brushed her hair back tenderly. "Yes. We broke the curse not because we were powerful, but because we refused to stay broken." From behind them, Kael entered quietly, his silver cloak brushing the marble floor. He leaned against the pillar, arms crossed, a smile tugging at his lips as he listened. "She gets her wisdom from you," he said softly. Lyra chuckled. "And her stubbornness from you." He grinned. "That's what makes her perfect." They stood together, the three of them, framed by moonlight, the embodiment of all the world's myths and miracles. Decades later, songs would still be sung about that night, the night the moon itself descended upon Moonvale to bless its rulers. The goddess appeared, veiled in light, her voice echoing through every heart that believed. The prophecy is fulfilled, yet it begins anew. The Moonblood line will never fade. From shadow and flame, from love and loss, shall rise those who balance the world again. And then, silence. A gentle peace settled over the land that would last 1,000 years. The banners of the eclipsed union waved across valleys and mountains. Wolves from every pack roamed freely, their howls blending in harmony instead of war. The moon shone brighter each year, its glow never fading again. Lyra's name became legend, not as a queen of vengeance, but as the Moonblood Queen, chosen by the goddess herself. Kael became known as the Alpha Eternal, protector of balance, father of nations, but to each other, they were simply Lyra and Kael, two souls bound by fire, shadow, and an unbreakable love. On the 50th moon festival of their reign, the entire kingdom gathered beneath the glowing sky. Children danced with silver ribbons, elders shared tales of the dark war, and the air was filled with music and joy. As the moon reached its highest point, Lyra stepped forward on the grand balcony, her daughter, now grown, at her side. The crowd went silent, waiting. She lifted her hands, the moonlight gathering around her like silk. "My people," she said, her voice clear as crystal, "you once called me cursed. You once called me weak. But I stand before you not as a queen who conquered, but as a woman who endured." The crowd bowed. Even the stars seemed to hold their breath. Lyra turned to Auron, taking her hand. And now, a new chapter begins. The moon's light will guide her, as it once guided me. Kael placed his hand over theirs, his gaze filled with pride. The Moonblood legacy will never fade, because love never dies. Auron stepped forward, her voice trembling yet strong. I swear to rule as you did, with mercy, courage, and light. The crowd erupted in cheers, and above them, the moon blazed brighter than ever before, as if the goddess herself smiled upon them. Lyra looked up at the sky, her heart full. Do you hear that, Kael? The world sings again. He kissed her forehead. It always will, as long as your name is remembered. That night, as the kingdom celebrated, Lyra stood alone by the balcony. Her favorite place, the place where it all began. The wind carried the scent of lilies, the same as the night she first found hope again. Auron's laughter echoed from below. Kael's voice mingled with the music, and above them, the moon shimmered softly, whispering words only Lyra could hear. The cursed Omega became the goddess's chosen. She smiled, tears glinting like diamonds. No, she whispered back. She became herself. And for the first time since her birth, the moon didn't just shine upon her. It bowed. Everyone mocked the rejected Omega princess, until the Alpha King revealed who she truly was, the lost daughter of the moon. And that was the Moonblood legacy. A tale of love that defied death, of power born not from bloodlines but from pain turned into purpose. If Lyra and Kael's journey moved your heart, if their love reminded you that no curse is too strong, no fate too cruel, then don't let this story end here. Like, subscribe, and share this audiobook, so others can rise from their own ashes, so they too can find their light in the darkness. Because the next tale waiting in the shadows will blow your mind. This is only the beginning.